Hey, what's up? It's a Friday edition of Locked on Raptors. Sean Woodley with you here as always, and we are talking today about a very, very fun Raptors win over the Philadelphia 76ers last night, 115-109, with a pair of OG Anunoby assists to Gary Trent Jr. and Fred VanVleet, setting the stage for the Raptors win. Really great fun time, very bizarre game. We're going to dig into our big takeaways. We're going to talk about Chris Boucher's explosive performance, Precious Achiuwa's opposite of that, and then we also have our due to the game to hand out. It's, again, the segment everybody's asking for, so we will bring it to you once again to close out the show and close out the week here with your Friday edition of Locked on Raptors.
You are Locked on Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1056 of Locked on Raptors for Friday, November the 12th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at WoodleySean. You can find the show at Locked on Raptors, where you can find links to every single episode of the podcast. And, of course, the podcast is free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms, whether it's the podcast apps or in video form on YouTube. You can subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, support the show in for as little as $0. It's exactly $0 to do all of that. So please go ahead and do that. And a big thank you, as always, for making this your first listen of the day. Today's show is also brought to you by our pals over at McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. More on them in a little bit. All right. On today's show, we are talking about a 115-109 Raptors win over the Philadelphia 76ers on the second night of a back-to-back. No Pascal Siakam, no Khem, Birch, no Yuta Watanabe, but they still pull it out despite flirting very often with not pulling it out. And joining me on today's show to talk about all that went on, from OG Anunoby's big-time assists late in the game, Fred VanVleet's 32 points, Chris Boucher's excellent performance, and the due to the game, it is Katie Heindl. Katie, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I have to say, I felt incredibly seen when Nick Nurse said the biggest metric is your heart.
As a basketball feeling subscriber, maybe he subscribed under an alias, perhaps. Yeah,
maybe.
It's actually me. He took my name. Me and Nick are sharing an account. But Katie, it's lovely to have you here once again to talk about this very fun game. Before we get to that, though, I have to ask you. I don't know if this comes through on the video, but whenever I'm doing my cold open and I throw to the musical intro, I feel like I'm giving like a weird smoldering look, not intentionally. It's just kind of how it happens. I might have to people start grading the smolder. Is this a thing that you're noticing, or is it entirely in my head?
I did not notice that at all.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it's not like
now that I'm
an enormous bit. Yeah.
Looking for it. Maybe I will notice it.
Well, we will keep tabs on the smolder going forward. It might be a new part of the show. Just grade the smolder in the comments if you'd like. All right, let's talk about the game against the Sixers. Again, we'll get to Chris Boucher a little bit later on. We're going to talk about the due to the game, but we should probably start near the end, where the Raptors were down 109-107, and then back-to-back possessions. We see OG Anunoby find Andre Drummond, your boy, on a switch. You know, you abuse that matchup the way that he should as a 6'8" dude who can handle against Andre Drummond in space, and then found Gary Trent Jr. first for a corner three with a nice little baseline pass, and then through traffic with like a lot of dudes kind of, blocking the way. He's falling over. OG finds Fred VanVleet in the corner for a three that ignites a Sam Cassell's big ball celebration. I am no longer allowed to talk about it. Katie gave me one reference to the big balls, and that's it. And the Raptors win. That basically puts it away. OG cans a couple free throws later on, and it's a 115-109 win to snap a three-game losing streak. I want to start with those OG assists, Katie, because I feel like this is very clearly my biggest takeaway of the game. Like, this is exactly why the Raptors have been feeding OG tons of opportunities all season long, right? Like, the sort of dependence on Fred VanVleet to initiate everything not only is just like a crazy burden on Fred VanVleet, who's 6 feet tall and has his own personal, physical limitations, as amazing as he is at overcoming them. it's also just like a diversity thing, right? Like giving more options for the defense to worry about, as opposed to just knowing it's going to be Fred VanVleet either running a pick and roll or a dribble handoff in the crunch time of every game. This time they free Fred up to go off the ball, to do his relocation thing, and give OG the trust to make those plays. I just, what was your sort of reaction to seeing those go down, Katie? For me, it was just like vindication of all of the funneling of OG. And, you know, there's been some growing pains, there's been some hiccups, but I think this is kind of the flash of what the Raptors end product should look like. That should have people pretty excited.
Well, first, and this will be my only reference to it, but did Sam Cassell see it? Is there like a reaction of him, or did anyone ask him about it post game if he was available?
I don't know.
That's what I want to
to
know.
do it with him in the house is, you know, a Sam Cassell ass move, I would argue.
It is. I'd like to think that he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I liked seeing OG as the ball handler, like late in the game. You know, I think he set up Gary Trent. I think he also really helped to calm things down in that last stretch. Like you know, they'd kind of edged out a lead, but it looked like the Sixers might be going on a little bit of a run and coming back. And, you know, OG, if he can be like that kind of calm, very level man as we know him to be, but if he can be that way in that role, then that's phenomenal. I also think, like, you know, you're giving Fred a lot of other opportunities to do what he did. And then, like, maybe down the road, you're also giving Fred some opportunities to take a bit of a breather.
Yeah. Didn't happen last night, as he played another 40 minutes. Malachi Flynn really just not doing Nick Nurse, like, just use him to play 12 minutes so Fred can play 36. That might be the move here. But either way, Fred obviously has been essential to the Raptors being good this season. And yeah, I think any way you can free him up to do what he's literally best at, and literally like got votes for finals MVP doing, which is working off ball, relocating, just being a guy that people can target, like that is a very, very good development. And I think you'll see as the season progresses, it's not just going to be OG. We're going to see, obviously, Pascal Siakam, I think, get a lot of those crunch time touches. I think we'll see a lot of like Siakam and OG pick and roll with Fred spacing. Like, all of that is totally possible. Same with Scottie Barnes. Like, he's going to have his responsibility leveled up as well. And I think my like overall sort of feeling on this game is that, you know, it was a very incomplete, uneven performance start through finish, as you might expect when they're down so many guys. But that's been the case for most Raptors games this season. This is not a team that exudes like polish and completeness. And I think that's kind of the point. Like, I think they're still in the molding phase for a lot of these guys. And you see those little flashes, and like the flashes are enough sometimes to pull out wins in spite of sections of the game where they don't score for 4 minutes, or where they're allowing Tyrese Maxey to have his own personal layup line in the middle of crunch time. You know, those little flashes of like what the end product will be eventually are enough to A, win some games, and B, like get you pretty excited about what it could look like down the line. We should talk about, oh, sorry, go ahead, Katie.
No, I was just going to say, it's like, I mean, the trifecta of like this working so well is because I think OG, Fred, and Pascal, like, all know each other's game so well. They're extremely familiar, but I did want to touch back to, especially when you mentioned Scottie, what we were talking about yesterday, about how someone like Scottie has already has like such a phenomenal read of the game, and not just the game as it comes to him, but also the game as his teammates play it. So to see him kind of fitting into that, if you're going to anticipate Pascal getting more touches, you know, if this continues with OG, which I hope it does, they're kind of naturally ready to slot Scottie into that, right? And like get him up to speed, because he's shown he's got the aptitude for it.
Yeah, his third quarter was something else. Like, he only had 13 points in this game. Wasn't one of his bigger scoring efforts, but that third quarter, when, I mean,
9 rebounds is nothing to like.
No, yeah, obviously the 9 rebounds, he had the 2 blocks, he had 4 assists. Like, it was a really like excellent, all-encompassing performance from Barnes, even if the scoring totals weren't, you know, kind of what we've become used to, and that was totally fine. When he did score, I think he had 8 points in the third. Like, that was so essential and really helped propel them ahead. They ended up winning that quarter by 8, 29-21, to go up by 3 into the fourth. And like, Scottie had one play that was just, he has one of these every night, it seems, where I'm just like, how does a 20-year-old like do this? But he had this one play in transition where He was like ahead of the team. He was the first guy down the floor. He just kind of takes like a small little pause, and then all of a sudden, before I even saw Chris Boucher there on the television screen, he's already hitting Chris Boucher in stride with a little bounce pass in traffic, and it ends with a bucket for Boucher. Like that kind of like slow processing of a possession where normally like with transition, especially with young guys and guys who are like that athletic and long and sort of spry, it's sort of like a race to the basket, and you kind of just barrel in and hope you get something out of it. But Scottie Barnes, not him. He's just like, all right, there's a guy in front of me. I don't need to like force the issue here. Someone's going to come along. Oh, there he is. Pass done. Bucket. And like that was really impressive. And then like the mid-range shot he hit after like all his sort of around the basket, mayhem that he was causing, like that was just like a cherry on top.
I'm glad that
and obviously
Boucher
Fred had a
made
huge
up.
third as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm glad that Boucher made up for that, because what was it in the Cavs game where Scottie told him to cut twice, like pretty obviously, and Boucher just completely ignored him. So I'm glad Boucher made up for that. You got to trust this guy. He might be 19, but he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he seems to have a pretty good awareness of what's happening on the floor and where everyone should stand. Before we move on, I also just a shout out to Fred VanVleet for his third quarter in particular. Like the buckets he offered, just like I'd mentioned the Tyrese Maxey layup line. It was kind of like that for Fred, except the layups were like hilariously difficult finishes with the left hand off glass through traffic and stuff. I mean, we're kind of seeing a new level of Fred VanVleet this season in terms of shot making and just sort of ability to bail out the team. His true shooting is up to like 56%, which is a nice little peak after, kind of being down in the 51, 52 range. So certainly, as much as OG, I think, gets the plaudits for the late game assists, I think Fred VanVleet, like the reason they're in this game is probably because of how Fred and Scottie played in that third quarter. Yeah.
Or like Fred playing like that all game, I think. Like, I think that was just like his kind of grit. We got to shout out former recent dude of the game, that title. I was very apt to give it to him yesterday because he basically just dug in and was like, no more after that Celtics game, and like he kind of strung them along until basically, his teammates finally decided to dig in and help him out. But like 32 points on 11 of 22 shooting, I think, like, I don't know, like, thank you, Fred.
6 boards, 7 assists as well. Team best plus 14. Fred VanVleet, very, very good at basketball, as it turns out. We will continue on, Katie. We're going to talk about Chris Boucher's big night, his best game of the season, maybe Precious Achiuwa's worst game of the season, and how the big man rotation could be affected, as it seems like Pascal Siakam, well, he will be back the next game on Saturday. Khem Birch hopefully nearing a return, and Yuta Watanabe seemingly back within a week as well. We'll sort through that mess in 1 second here. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at McDonald's, who are proudly serving communities still and have been since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's a place where family, friends, pals, enemies, whatever it is, can come to reconnect. A place where classmates can meet up for a study group, knowing they'll have dependable Wi-Fi and an endless supply of French fries and McFlurries. Win or lose, it's a place where teammates, competitors, the home team, or the away team can come to recharge after a big game. It's the place where you always look forward to stopping on a long road trip to rest your legs and refuel. I'll tell you a story about McDonald's. I have lots of these anecdotes about McDonald's. I've been quite a few times in my day. I was on a class trip down to Florida. We were on a bus, and we stopped in, I want to say, somewhere, I can't remember the town, but it was in South Carolina. We stopped at a McDonald's in South Carolina and went in, and I was just having such a time, having such a great, that I lost track of time and almost missed our bus and almost got left at a McDonald's in South Carolina because it just inspired me to be tardy and not get back to the bus on time, despite the many warnings from the bus driver that he would just leave us in the lurch if we were not there at the time we were leaving. So thank you to McDonald's for roping me in and almost leaving me in South Carolina, but it's just that fun to go. By the way, they also have sports at McDonald's. You can watch sports there. They have televisions, World Cup games, whatever it is. You can go watch soccer. I don't know why I always use the World Cup example. You can watch any other sport there. I just know I personally watched World Cup games there. Either way, head to your local McDonald's to refuel, reconnect. Did somebody say Locked On Raptors watch party? There you go. Who's to say? That's a nice little tease. Either way, thank you so much to McDonald's for sponsoring the podcast. I'm loving it. Today's show is also brought to you by our pals over at betonline.ag, who are back and better than ever with a new web interface to start the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your #1 spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use the promo code LOCKEDON, all one word. From basketball, football, baseball, the futures for next season, NHL, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Katie, let's continue on here with your first listen of the day. Thank you, as always, for tuning into us first thing in the morning. Katie, Chris Boucher had himself a game last night. 17 points, 6 boards, 7 of 12 shooting, 2 blocks, played 24 minutes. Easily the best game he's played so far this season. And he was an absolute treat to watch. He ended up playing a little bit in crunch time. He ended up playing, either the 4 or the 5, kind of oscillating back and forth. Did it all pretty admirably. Looked like he was in position on defense in a way he has not been at most times this season. What were your impressions of Chris Boucher's explosive game against the Sixers?
I think it showed what's kind of been missing all along with Boucher coming back this season, which is good patience and good reads. Because he seems, I don't know, you could probably chalk his first couple of bad performances to just being in the wrong place at the wrong time and just bad luck, kind of. Sometimes
Sure.
that just happens, right, on the floor. But it was getting a little bit too consistent to feel like it was always just, that's always just spontaneously what was happening. I think him, especially those late points that he had to help bring the team back from being down 10 were super worthwhile to just help to dig them out of that hole. That's kind of the Boucher that I like and missed, this kind of clutch, very stealthy, could kind of pop up from anywhere and knock one down. So I like it. And I think it shows too that he's worked through. You always like it when a player can work through a bad stretch like that.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And come out the other side of it and not look too frazzled, not look like it's really affected them, to just trust themselves in their game that they're going to get back to where they know that they can play, right? We've seen him warming up and in practice, and he plays a lot better than that. So there was just something that wasn't really alchemizing on the floor. Really, not to get too mystical about it, but no, I'm happy for him. It was a good game for him to to do that. It sucks that Embiid is out, but I think it kind of gave Boucher an optimal stage to have that game.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it's weird because the thing that you kind of like about Chris Boucher is that he brings chaos and kind of is this wild card who can kind of come in and just all of a sudden he's dropping 20 and he's won the game for you. At the same time, I think he's at best when the chaos is controlled. And I think more often than not this season, it's not been very controlled. And actually, even in this game, I think in the first quarter in particular, we saw the bench lineup rolled out there. That was Boucher and Achiuwa in the front court. And that was just too much chaos. I think my theory from the start of the season that playing those two together would just be a little bit too much to handle is coming true. It's just it's a lot of enterprising dudes trying to do things that maybe they shouldn't be doing, but they feel emboldened because it's the second unit or whatever. And Nick Nurse emboldens guys, and that's a good thing. But both of those guys together, it's a lot of miscues. It's a lot of sort of overzealousness. And we saw that kind of play out in that first quarter. Even Boucher had a couple of kind of out of control, weird push shots that he tried to put up through traffic and whatnot. But in the second half in particular, he kind of just becomes more of a transition hound, where he's just all right, I'm going to run the floor. You're going to find me and I'm going to dunk it. And that was a really effective way for him to go. He hit the 1-3 as well, which was huge. But honestly, I was even more impressed with him on defense in this game. He kind of offered that back line that the Raptors don't really have all that often unless Khem Birch is in there. And usually there have been possessions so far this season where he's looked like Matt Thomas used to, just kind of like running around trying to find the guy he's supposed to be defending when the ball is on the other side of the floor. Just like a kind of a mess. And I thought he was way more controlled on the defensive side of things in this game as well, like around the basket. And we got called for one foul. It might have been on Maxey, where it looked like he could have said it was all ball. He asked for the challenge. Nick Nurse didn't do it. I think they might have won that one, honestly. It just wasn't a very high leverage point of the game. But overall, like a really controlled game for Boucher. On the other side of things, Katie, Precious Achiuwa, not so much. He played 30 minutes in this game, starting in place of Pascal Siakam. 4 points, 9 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks. I thought he was very good defensively. He picked up the counting stats to prove it. But on the offensive end, 1 of 10, 0 of 2 from 3. Thankfully, one of his missed threes was such an air ball. It looked like a pass into the waiting mitts of Scottie Barnes, which was nice. But this was as rough an Achiuwa game as we've seen, I think. Where are you at with Precious right now? Because I get, totally that Nick Nurse wants to keep sort of giving him opportunities, see if he can kind of work through things. At the same time, it seems that all of the team's worst spells of play tend to come when he's out there just trying to do stuff. The dog doesn't like it either. And so, like, where are you at with Precious and with Siakam, Birch, and Yuta all on their way back soon? Do you think Precious maybe stands a risk of losing his rotation spot based on the way he's played recently?
He's gonna have to lose some minutes necessarily, right? When those guys come and get work back in, especially I think like what we've seen and what I miss a little bit, especially in these like last few bad losses, is the steadiness that someone like Yuta brings back into the game. And in terms of just playing a more traditional like center role, which is what it seems like Precious has been having some trouble with. Granted, like I'm really not on this bandwagon that's like he should be he should lose all his minutes. Like this struggle is kind of indicative of something greater. I really don't think it is. I think what he spoke about in practice right before the team went on the road, I think was the clearest explanation he probably could have gone for what he's going through right now, which is feeling a little bit strung out essentially by having to play. If you're asking someone like him who's in his second year to play positionless really fluidly, like we don't talk enough about how good you have to be to actually be good at playing a positionless basketball. You have to know how to do everything, and you have to know when to do it, right? You have to know when to like step back and be like, you know what, I am just gonna play the role of a traditional big in this game. That's where I'm the most useful. Or like I should really shoot, and I should shoot through any slumps because that's what the team needs right now. And he said he's trying to learn, or he has been learning a lot from Khem Birch in terms of just like Khem pointing out, like Khem being a traditional center, or like the most traditional center the team has right now, pointing out to him like what he should do and when he should wait and kind of sit back. So I think this is just a little bit of a plateau for him. A little bit of a kind of a struggle in that. He's a really young player. This was the most sustained minutes he's ever gotten. He didn't get to play like this in Miami. He was never asked to play like this in Miami. So you're also kind of asking him to take on a completely different skill set and be good at it. And like that is the expectation the Raptors have. They should be able to ask him to do that, but he's got to, he's got to get there. And I think he's still getting there. I think in a game like last night, it's just frustrating because, as you mentioned, like he was so good defensively, but he kept trying to push through to something offensively. And like that's a good example of what I was saying before of like knowing when to read the game and be like, you know what, I'm actually going to be the most impactful on the defensive end. And I'm just going to try and create opportunities on the like offensive end for my teammates. And I'm going to take a step back and not try and make like hero ball shots, or try and just like, I know some people have said like, oh, he's playing really selfishly. He's just trying to like pad his own stat line. I don't really think it's that, because like what use would he have for that? Like, Nick Nurse and his coaching staff don't really look at those kinds of things when they're deciding what the rotations are going to look like. Like that's just more of like a pure, I guess, like selfish thing. And it's way too early in the season, I think, for somebody like him to be playing that way. Also, I really don't have the sense that he's that kind of player in any of my interactions with him. So it wasn't great. And he has had a few rough games, but I also am not really ready to write him off yet. And I think it's way too early to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's very clear that there's something within Precious Achiuwa that's pretty interesting, right? Like he's a 6'8", 6'9", thick dude who can like hang with bigger guys on defense, and like he's got a handle that you shouldn't have when you're that big. And that's a really interesting thing to sort of build upon. And I think, I don't think any of his missed shots, like he goes 1 of 10. I don't think any of it's like bad intentioned gunner stuff, right? I think it's just him again trying to figure out where he can attack best, and it's just he hasn't quite found that sweet spot yet. That said, I do think he is probably in line to lose some minutes pretty significantly once Khem Birch is back in particular, because it does seem like the Raptors want to go with this small ball starting 5 most games. And I'm happy with that. That's what I want to see. I think they've done a lot sort of working Scottie in as a center. They closed with him for a stretch last night as a center as well. And I think that's just like, to me, the optimal Raptors lineup you can find. And so if that means Khem's coming off the bench, that means someone is going to lose minutes among the Boucher, Yuta, probably Svi is in that mix too, and then Achiuwa group. Like maybe even 2 of those guys are going to be down minutes pretty bad. And I think Precious, just the way he's played, I can see the Raptors maybe still sort of investing in him and maybe having him ahead of Boucher, maybe not just using one Boucher game to kind of throw him back into regular 20-minute a night rotation mix. But I think, there's certainly an argument to be made that Precious could be kind of reined in a little bit and kind of work on his stuff along the side, perhaps, and then work him back into the rotation later in the season. Obviously, injuries will come up and things like that. I don't think he's going anywhere, but certainly
you can almost see like where he's trying to fall back to what's comfortable for him, because I don't know if you remember, but like early in the season and definitely in the preseason, Nick really celebrated and like seemed to love so much his ability to go coast to coast, as Nick would say, right? And it seems like Precious is trying to kind of settle back into that as a rhythm to get comfortable, which makes a lot of sense in his gameplay, but it's not what the team needs at all right now from him.
Yeah. So we can leave that there for now. Great game for Chris Boucher. Awesome to see. Precious Achiuwa still working it out, but that's okay. Hopefully reinforcements are on the way for the front court soon. Katie, we are going to talk on the other side about the dude of the game, the segment that the whole world is clamoring for, future award-winning segment, the dude of the game, as we will dig into a player from the Raptors who we haven't really talked about yet, who was critical to the Raptors' victory. We'll get to that in 1 second here. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Built Bar, who are making the best tasting protein bars in the world. And Thanksgiving, November, it is Built Bar month, baby. It is the time for Built Bars to shine. You might be, thinking about, all right, well, I got all these like dinners I got to go to. I got Thanksgiving. I got Christmas dinner coming up. It's a lot of heavy foods you're going to be eating. Maybe you're thinking, all right, in order to sort of balance things out, I'm going to maybe go lighter on the desserts this year than I typically would. And I can dig into the savory stuff and really kind of make that my focus. And if you want to do that, Built Bar is a wonderful way for you to help you get yourself kind of weaned off those 300 calorie a pop slices of pie. Instead, go for a Built Bar. You have a Built Bar flavor to match essentially any flavor of pie out there, and they come at 130 calories compared to that average of 300 for your pies. And that's actually the low end. It's not even the average. More pie slices are going to be up to like 400 or 500 calories. 130 calories for a Built Bar, 4 grams of sugar, and plenty of protein. Why not replace that, the raspberry pie with a raspberry Built Bar, or any other pie with a Built Bar of a similar persuasion? Low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein, covered in 100% real chocolate. Built is a great option for when you're hungry. If Thanksgiving isn't coming soon enough for you, don't worry about it. You can just go have a Built Bar right now. It doesn't have to be on a holiday. You can have it whenever you want. Share some at your family gatherings. Bring a large bucket. Toss them at your grandparents. See if they like them as well. It'll make and you can certainly, maybe your grandmother or your aunt has an affinity for Built Bars that you did not know. Maybe you've brought the joy of Built Bars into their lives. Either way, you're getting new surprises all month long at Built.com. So check regularly over at their website. It is, get limited time flavors, sales, things like that. And there's nothing like a Built Bar Black Friday. Mark your calendar. Black Friday will be a huge event with all sorts of fun surprises. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That is promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Katie, it's that time that everybody's been waiting for. Everybody has bated breath going into every new episode of Locked On Raptors after a game. It's time for the dude of the game. I submitted my suggestion to you before the show.
I'm
curious. I will give you the courtesy of choosing the dude of the game as today's guest. You did such a great job with Fred yesterday. I've given you my input. You can take it or leave it. Who do you have as your dude of the game?
Well, you know what? This is tough. I'll say my runner-up because Gary showed up for 20 points, and he
Mm.
also let VanVleet and Barnes take a break, like take a
Mm-hmm.
rest. Maybe the only rest Fred got that whole game. But your point, and your hoped for choice of Svi does make a lot of sense because Svi was in there getting offensive boards. And I think
Mm-hmm.
last night they had like 16 offensive rebounds that led to 32 second chance points, which, like,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, this half court offense is still looking a little ratty. So if
Woo.
all their points are going to come in transition
Yeah.
and you're going to make up for it with those second chance points, you need somebody to be able to do that like night after night. This is how they're going to
Mm-hmm.
win games, I think, at least for like the next little while. So I'm happy to give it to Svi.
Svi Mihailuk, the dude of the game. We love to see it. The caption's the wrong color. There we go. I fixed it. Dude of the game. His first dude of the
Diva.
game victory. I agree. This was my selection coming in. Look, pretty quiet game overall. 5 points, 2 of 5 shooting, just 1 of 3 from downtown. But he had those 3 offensive rebounds you mentioned. The one offensive rebound he had late in the game where he ripped it from Andre Drummond, if I recall.
Yes.
Then
Yeah.
whipped it up to the top of the arc. It swung over to OG on the left wing. OG hits a big 3. That was huge. And then he hit a 3 as well on a gorgeous pass from Fred VanVleet. Like one of the best cross-court passes I've ever seen Fred throw. Hits Fee in the far right corner in that fourth quarter, I believe, as well. That was a massive 3. It feels like every 3 the Raptors hit in their half-court offense is like an
It is.
achievement. And so
It is.
that one was a really big one as well. So, yeah, hard to I think, there's lots of other candidates. You mentioned Gary Trent Jr. was outstanding in this game. He kind of is. My theory is that Gary Trent is the new Serge Ibaka, where you just need a guy to finish off plays, and boy, is he going to be very okay with finishing off plays for you most of the time.
Mhm.
And he also happens to be like an absolute menace on the defensive end in this game. Another 2 steals for him. Also had 4 assists. We're seeing a little bit more in terms of playmaking from Gary Trent Jr. So I think a noble runner-up, but very happy to give Sviji his first due to the game win of the season. I guess we can kind of tie the Svi thing into the conversation we just had, Katie, because once again, the rotation crunch is coming. Khem Birch hopefully back soon. Yuta, Siakam. People are going to lose minutes here. Nick Nurse does not like to run a 10 or 11 man rotation. He ran an 8-man rotation last night on the second night of a back-to-back. He likes to have his dudes. I'm curious, with the way Svi has played, is there any reason why he would lose minutes as guys come back here? He feels like he's kind of one of Nurse's trusted dudes at this point.
I think Nurse at this point, like he trusts him to come in and do what needs doing, right? Like he
Sure.
trusts him to kind of put on these pest moves, which is again how the Raptors are winning games. So the ideal would be if you're going to give Yuta more minutes, and if Khem's going to come back in and kind of steady the team out, you can still trust Fee to come in and almost like be the fixer where you need him to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, his minutes will probably go down, but I don't think it will have anything, like it's not a reflection of his playing. I think it's
Yeah.
just like he strikes me as the kind of player who stays ready, and will be able to like come in and again just like do what you need him to do.
I'm also finding that he's really unlocking a lot of the lineups that I like to watch the most. And I think that kind of produced the best offense because there's a lot of spacing out there. And I think, Nick Nurse made a smart move late in this game, as well as Boucher was playing. He made a sub, I think, with like 4 minutes left, where he took out Boucher, put in Svi, and they ran with Fred, Trent, OG, Svi, and Barnes at the 5. And I really, really like that sort of, the extra sort of shooting that Svi sort of breathes into those lineups. And obviously, once Scottie Barnes, or once Pascal Siakam is back, you would figure their closing lineup is going to be their starting 5 that they've rolled out since Siakam got back. But I do think if ever you get into a position where, maybe Scottie's not spacing it super well, or, Trent's having an off night, or you just have those in-between lineups throughout a game that you're looking to add a little bit more juice to, I think Svi in those small ball configurations, because he's like 6'7", because he's kind of mean, maybe he's not the best like point of attack defender, but he's going to fight. He's going to get those offensive boards. He's going to kind of throw a bow or two. I think he is a really nice addition to those lineups. And I would certainly have him, like if I'm sort of tiering out the bench guys on the team, I would say Khem Birch is kind of in a tier of his own at this point. He's the most reliable guy, I think, coming off that second unit, if he's going to remain in that second unit. And I would throw Svi right in that mix as well, because I think he just is pretty steady. Yeah, he'll have some games where maybe he tries to do a little bit too much or he doesn't shoot very well, but he's doing some small things on the sides that are helping the Raptors seemingly every
He's a gritty
game.
dude. Yeah.
What's that? Sorry?
He's a gritty dude. That's what
That
they
is
need.
how you win dude of the game, is be
Yeah.
a gritty dude. Be a dude, and you will be the dude. Sure. Let's leave it there, Katie. That will be the end of today's podcast. Congrats to Svi on his first dude of the game win. With that, before we go, Katie, anything you would like to promote for the good people out there?
Going into the weekend, you can subscribe to Basketball Feelings at basketballfeelings.com. I actually might have something out on Precious Achiuwa soon on all the things
Cool.
we have just talked about. So you can look for
Excellent.
that. Probably at Dime.
Wonderful. Everyone go check that out. Go subscribe to Basketball Feelings, just like Nick Nurse definitely has. And we will talk to you
Stop sharing
again
your
on
account with
Monday.
him. He can't afford his own subscription.
Yeah, I have to send him $350 a month. We split it. He's very, very like meticulous about making sure the split has been achieved each month. It's wild. But yes, please go and subscribe there, and support the podcast. We'll be back again on Monday as we will talk about the game against the Pistons and tee up a road trip where they'll be taking on the Blazers. Maybe our pal Mike Richmond will stop by. We love Mike Richmond over here, and we will talk about that Blazers game. The Jazz are on tap next week too as they go out west. But they got Dwayne Casey and Cade Cunningham and friends in Toronto for their last home game for a little while on Saturday. We'll break that all down. Sadiq Bey, Big Stew, Beef Stew? No, not Big Stew, Beef Stew.
Beef stew.
Fun Pistons team, if not very good right now. But that'll be talked about on Monday. In the meantime, you can subscribe to, rate, review, tell a friend, all that good stuff. It's very much appreciated when you support the podcast in any way, free on all of your favorite platforms. And with that, we will talk to you on Monday. Go make your second listen of the day, Locked On Fantasy Basketball, as Josh Lloyd is very good at what he does. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.